Hey everyone, I'm the Chosen One Legend here, as always joined by my co-host,
Hi, I'm Kai, also known as Fascurreyn.
and welcome back to the BunchaJokahs, where we are here once again for a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 breakdown, this time looking at chapters 5 and 6. And, oh boy, I think we,
Ooh!
uh, we might want to just get started on this because it's too early in the recording to cry. So I'll
It's
just,
quite possibly the heaviest stuff so far, in both emotion and just like everything that goes on, everything you learn, you know?
yes, these were the chapters that were trending on Twitter for a while when the game launched, and with good reason. But
hmm
I should say now, of course, this is a spoiler discussion, not just for these chapters, but for Chapter 7 and some post-game stuff. So check those out if you haven't before watching this. We also might reference elements of story from Xenoblade 1 and 2, it sometimes happens, so just keep that in mind. And there will be timestamps in the description below if you want to check out different sections. But Kai, shall we just get started now?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's go. So, Chapter 5 starts off. We've just escaped from Keves Castle, and we get some Sena focus, because this is going to be sort of a Sena chapter to an extent, until the Mia and Noah completely take over at the end. But for now, it's Sena, right? Which is nice. It's nice to
Yeah,
see a bit of Sena focus.
it is. Up to this point in the game, she's definitely the character who's had the least focus on pretty much every front.
Mm.
Of course, Noah and Mia's the main character, always have it. Tyon has a lot of chapters 2 and 3, as does Lanz. Um, And then even Uni, of course, has quite a few moments in Chapter 4. But now it's like, it's Senna time, yippee.
Yippee!
Yippee! So, yeah, it kind of just starts with a bit of sort of lore from her and the fact that she's lonely and Lance
Mm.
calls her out on it. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a clear indicator that this is going to start her arc in a sense.
Yeah, we sort of see a bit of a flashback with her and Mio and a bit of their dynamic because since meeting the gang, Mio and Senna haven't spent as much time together. But now we've sort of seen a bit more of their relationship and how Senna is quite reliant on Mio, even if she doesn't really admit it to herself. She definitely
hmm
tries to emulate her and copycat, and that's going to be definitely relevant later into the chapter. But it's interesting to start with her, and I'm glad we're getting more into her character for now.
Yeah.
But we move things quickly on to our next area, which is the Great Sword Base. I wish this area was bigger, because the music is
Mm.
so good! A remix of Sword Valley, which was not one of my favourite tracks from Xenoblade 1 by any means. It was good, but it served its purpose. But this remix, god tier!
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I should have expected it going into the area because it's quite
Yeah,
literally the sword, but
yeah.
I didn't. So when I first twigged that it was the Sword Valley theme, I was just like, whoa, like that's really
Mm.
cool, and it's one of my favorite area themes because of that. Like, partly nostalgia, but it just sounds really good.
It does, and this area in general, it's sort of like a bit of a marshland. I guess it reminds me a bit of like Sator Marsh in the day. I do like that we get the hints of Erythia Sea here with some of the Lithirian islands as part of the
hmm
marshes. That's kind of a neat touch there.
Yeah.
But it's not too much special about this place. It's just,
Can I mention? Can I
oh yeah,
mention the flute lore that I love mentioning? It's like my equivalent of going, "Oh, Ricky had the most HP because it was a joke." The anyway. So in Definitive Edition,
Hmm.
the Sword Valley theme, they added an extra 30 seconds onto the end of the theme. Have I already talked about this, or am I crazy?
You might have done in the main podcast, but go for it anyway.
Yeah, so in the main in the Sword Valley theme in Xenoblade Definitive Edition, they added an extra like 30 seconds onto the end of the song,
Hmm.
just because they were remastering a lot of songs, so some had slight changes, but this was like a whole section, and the whole section was flute based.
Yes.
Is that a reference to Xenoblade 3? I don't know, maybe,
Well,
but
they
like I made that connection pretty early on, and I was quite happy with that.
Well, they definitely knew at that point that the Great Sword was going to be one of the main features of the landmarks, and I'm sure they knew all about the flutes and that by that point. So it's certainly plausible,
Yeah,
if not even
I can't
likely. I'd
help
say,
but
yeah.
wonder how deliberate it was, just because like
Hmm.
it was a thing that I caught onto very early on. Like as soon as we knew that flutes was the theme and all that, and everyone was like, "Oh, future connected." My mind instantly went back to the sword. So Yeah,
Yeah.
just a fun little thing.
And of course, the main thing about this area here is this is where we finally get to meet some of the lost numbers. We meet Monica Vandham, a new Vandham, but this time, as we're going to learn later, I think she says it right here, she's Guernica's daughter.
Hmm.
And I love this approach of having like a Vandham lineage as part of the game, because
Yeah.
I was sad when we got like, hey, here's this game's version of Vandham. He's in the trailers. Oh, he's dead in chapter 1. You know, it's
He got
it was a
ripped
shame.
away from us like that. It was so sad.
He did, but getting to see Monica and another Vandham later down the line, it's such a nice touch. I really like what they do with her character. How do you find Monica, Kai?
Yeah, I like her as a character. It's very clear that she has the same kind of sort of personality as Vandham. Of course, like slightly different, but
Yeah.
you know, you can see the resemblance, and I think that's really cool. I was very upset when they did tear Guernica away from us. So, you know, I'm happy that she's there and, you know, eventually becomes playable and all that. It's a very... Well, I say eventually. I think she becomes a temporary hero right then and there, but it's a very nice touch that I'm glad that they decided to have that be one of the characters, because they could have probably easily just made like some... You know, they could have made the same character and just not called her Vandham. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they did.
Same here, yeah. And we also, I should say, we meet Shania for the first time. She was teased way at like the end of chapter 1 or start of chapter 2.
Yes.
Finding the leftover Ouroboros stone and that. Not that we know what it is right now, but you know, from when the group first met. But we finally get to see her now, and I thought she was going to be like potentially a hero or a companion. They take a different approach, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it's one of those characters where, like, first time around, it's just like, oh, okay, she's just there, you know, showing us around. She's just a bit aloof, that's all it is. That wasn't all it was. Because when you see her in chapter 1, I believe you also see, like, X watching her from the distance or whatever.
I think they show that in this chapter later on. We don't see that in chapter 1.
Oh, was it?
But we do see that this chapter, yeah.
Yeah,
as a tease.
But character changes. We'll probably talk about her more, I'd imagine, later on.
Yes. I will say, even from the get-go, like, I don't know, something about her design, just she looks a bit younger, she has like the sort of pigtails thing. I thought she was going to be sort of like maybe a bit more of a comedy cutesy character. But even when you first meet her, she's quite stern and serious. It's like, okay, no, that's not where we're going with this.
Yeah, she's an odd one.
We'll definitely get to her more later, but for now, we follow Monica, and on our way to finally visit, you know, Swordmarch, the city where we've been heading this time. On the way there, we do get to climb the Great Sword itself, but not really much. I wish we got more of it, because it's only really a small section before you go into the city, and it's really nice how it's got like this snow because of the altitude, how you can see like Agnus Castle in the distance. It's a beautiful view, but there's not really much to it, and I don't know, I thought maybe you'd actually get to climb up it, which would have been awesome.
I think that they could have made that like a whole area. They could have made an entire area just based on climbing up it. Because we don't really get many vertical areas in Xenoblade. It's just like, I guess there's a couple from 1 and
Mechonis in 1 is the main thing, really.
Yeah.
I guess.
There isn't much of it in Xenoblade 3 to my memory. So it's like, that could have been a nice place for it to go in. But, you know, it's fine. They do have an elevator because they're slightly more advanced, I suppose.
Yeah. It's still nice to see, and it's not like there's a shortage of areas to explore in the game, especially with what we're going to be getting to later, so we cannot complain.
Yeah.
I wonder though, can you like trace the spot where you go on Swordmarch, the actual sword, in Xenoblade 1? I wonder if you can do that.
I've not thought of doing that.
Yeah.
I would imagine not, because of the
Probably
way that
not.
Sword Valley works in 1, where you're exploring through the crevices, and it would be difficult. But I guess the one idea you could put forward is that quite possibly where the city is located on the base might be where Galahad Fortress used to be. I think that's around the same spot.
Yeah, it does look about there, that's true.
I'd need to check though. Yeah, that's an interesting one though. I'll definitely check that out.
Do wonder. But anyway, we pass through here quite quickly, and then we arrive at the city, which is quite aptly named. Though it almost seems, you know, a bit generic. Oh, it's just called the city. But it makes sense in Xenoblade 3 because it's the only city. There are no cities in this game.
Exactly,
And
it's very fitting.
I do see that as like a bit of a complaint about the game sometimes, that, you know, because the world, the way the world is the game, you don't get to visit these big cities like you do in Xenoblade 2 and 1, which you do miss it, but it works with the story, especially in how it feels so impactful the first time you get to the city and, wow, this is a real place. It feels so different to the world we're used to, and that's the point. It's completely new to the cast of the game as well. They're like, what the heck is this?
I think it's really jarring because, like, if you were to look at it just from an outsider perspective, the city is like the most normal place in the game because it's just got like a bunch of normal things going on. But after playing 4 chapters of the game, and depending how you play the game, that could be like, you know, 80 hours or whatever. It's so jarring to then just see people living normally, and it's like, it's very impressive that they managed to pull such a weird juxtaposition there. So, yeah, it's good. I like it.
Yeah, it's a nice place. There's a lot of cool quests to open up here, and we'll get to that more, but, you know, we're going to learn a lot here. This is a place where things start to come unravelled. And the first of those is we meet the Ouroboros candidates, which is kind of interesting, and this isn't something we learn till later, but I'm just going to connect them both now here. We also later see the founders, the statue of the original Ouroboros.
Yes.
And this is sort of our reveal that this is a lineage of going down throughout the years, that there have been several, and I did not expect that kind of twist in this game. Like, I thought this is, we are the Ouroboros, but the fact that there's this whole lineage of Ouroboros going down, it's a very interesting prospect.
Yeah, and you know, when you investigate those statues, there's like a ton of information, and there's the idea of like, oh, this one resembles Noah slightly from House of Vandham. Oh, this one's Mio. Hang on, doesn't that Noah one look like the protagonist from Xenogears? And it's like, there's so many different things to draw from.
Yeah.
And it does, again, we'll talk about this probably in another video, but very possibly a setup for Founders DLC. We'll see. There's so much there that's like cryptic, you know, it's cool.
It is, yeah. But the next main thing we go to is we see the pods from earlier, and this is sort of, you could have pieced it a bit together yourself, but this is the main revelation that yes, this world has a cycle of rebirth, and suddenly so many bits from previously come sort of together. The whole thing with Uni seeing her husk, the potential of Euron returning, all of it sort of starts to make sense now. Things are starting to click, and it is only going to get crazier from here. This is a low-key reveal for this chapter, if you believe it.
It's a weird one because, like, in my eyes, the whole thing of them getting reborn, in my head, that is like common knowledge from the game. It's not even like something you learn. But of course, in the actual game, I didn't have a clue up to that point. But in hindsight, like, it makes so much sense because through the whole of the first couple chapters, I was like, okay, so they're clearly farming the people. Like, that was my whole thing I kept saying, is that they're just farming the soldiers. Not a single part of me, like, properly clued out, oh, part of farming is that they're just reusing them again. I think I've slightly called it, but like not to the full extent. So it's a cool idea, though. It makes complete sense in the context of the world. So this a little bit of extra world building is definitely like a really interesting one to learn.
Yeah, and then we get one of the most weirdly wholesome scenes of the game when they go to visit a hospital and they meet a baby for the first time, and it is generally a really cute scene because you didn't really think of it before, but yeah, these guys have no clue about the way the world is meant to be, the way humans normally work. And just seeing, like, in particular, what gets me is Tyon, how excited Tyon gets.
He was so excited.
Yeah.
He was like, whoa! It's like, okay, man, calm down. Calm down, Tyon.
This is, it's a nice scene. There's, like, a good balance of genuine, like, heart as well as humour in there. Of course, we end on the question, who wants to learn how babies are made? Everyone raises a hand.
It's so cursed. And I love the video that sprung from from another quest, I believe, of just Uni going, babies, you guys got any babies?
Oh yeah, she asked that to Grey.
I think I've seen that clip with her in every single costume with just how many people have posted it.
Same.
And it's like, it's one of the best lines in the game.
Yeah, it's one of those great lines there because to Uni, you know, they're just like, it's something new and exciting. She doesn't know that's not really an appropriate question to ask a couple. It's
so funny. Just the delivery is perfect.
It's honestly, it's one of my highlights of the game this year. It's just so funny, and
it's a great scene.
And then afterwards, you sort of get to see the start of chemistry forming, I should say. Bit more of awkwardness between the characters that wasn't there before, but their eyes have been opened. Let's leave it at that.
Oh god. That's when we get more like Noah and Mio shipping stuff too, as they start looking at a couple and it's like, oh, and it's like, okay, there you go. There's more of it.
Romance? Gasp.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know it exists. It's another like common knowledge thing that they are blissfully unaware of. It's quite funny to see them sort of internally figure out that this is an emotion that exists, and it's like, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fun.
After that, now that we've sort of figured out a bit more of what's going on, they've sort of learned that, yes, the world is not meant to be this way. We also get confirmed, thankfully, that the true queens are out there, and we've got to help them. And, I mean, I knew that the robots were not the real queens, but I was still, it was almost a sigh of relief, like, thank goodness this isn't just a fake out and Nia and Melia aren't in this game, because that would have been so lame.
It's very nice to hear that they actually are, It would have been incredibly underwhelming for them to not exist.
I trust Monolith Soft, but I'm glad we got this confirmation here.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have enough confirmation, just look at that Game Awards trailer that was put out the other day as of recording this that just showed Melia.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly. But, so we have our quest now. We want to look for specifically the Queen of Agnus. We hear that there's someone on the inside in a prison camp by Agnus Castle who's got the information we need to find Queen Nia. And that's our new mission now. And first of all, we got to go get a boat from my boy Samon.
Samon, kind of the MVP.
He is. Screw Lanz. Samon's the MVP. We were all thinking it.
And Samon, the MVP, it's like he clutches up a lot later, but even now, just like we get the boat,
Yes.
We get a boat in Xenoblade. I mean, it's of course a lot of RPGs like this do have you unlock a boat, and eventually an airship type thing later in the game. It's a very common thing, but Xenoblade's never had it. Okay.
Exactly. It's unique. Let's just get onto that really, because we go into our next area, Erythia Sea, which bloody huge. You need a boat for this. There's a good reason.
Yeah. I mean, God, it's so big.
If I had to swim across all of this, like I did, exploring Erythia Sea in Xenoblade 1, dear God, it would have killed me. So they make good use of it. And this, I mean, there's not too much story here. There's so much optional side quests, but I'm glad that we have this kind of area for a first time in a Xenoblade game where you're free to just explore masses of content. It's like Wind Waker, it's that sort of vibe of exploring islands and discovering stuff. It's so fun.
Yeah, I would like to share an anecdote, because I don't think you were watching the streams around when I did this, but
I've heard stories.
Yeah, so when I was playing through the game, I was like exploring every area fully before moving on, like every possible part of the map I could fill in, I was filling in. So I got to Cadentia, and it's like, oh my God. And I triple checked with everyone who was in the chat at the time. I was like, are you sure I can't fill in the map by getting all the locations? Like, that's not a thing. Is that a thing that exists in this game? And everyone was like, it does not exist in this game. I spent about maybe like 3 hours or so just like going up and down the map in strips in this boat, the boat that has very poor handling, mind you, trying to fill in this map and getting absolutely nowhere. And it was absolutely miserable. And then at the very end of it, at around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, I was told, oh no, it does actually fill in. I had a drink that day, I really did. But hey, I mean, outside of that very sort of miserable anecdote, I do really like the area's idea, like you say, like the Wind Waker idea and exploring everywhere. It's very cool.
It is, and like even some of these you shouldn't get to till much later. I'm sure you kited your way through it, but but even there's some really like these caverns you go to where they're all like lit up with like all glowing with different colour like rocks or moss or something, and there's so many different, like, there's the island that's all got like crystals as part of it that you go to as part of the story, I think. Because you've got to like get some stuff. What's that?
Corn Island. Remembered the name?
Yes, that's it. Show off, Kai. Come on. But yeah, there's so much here, and it's not just all the same generic-looking sea lands. There's different types of terrain, and it's a joy to explore. Even if you might be doing it for like across the rest of the game at this point into the post game, because some stuff gets high level, but it's a fun area. And even if the boat doesn't control amazingly, it does a good enough job, unless you need the tight turn.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And of course, like the whole story part in Cadentia, like you said, is very brief. Because all it's like is like, there's like a couple like islands and stuff you need to go to, just I guess to help with infiltrating, and that's really it. You know, it's a very side content heavy area, which again I'm super chill with how big it is. The only bit of story you really get here is like the you learn a bit more about Sena and Shania again, which is kind of cool. Yes,
that was an interesting bit, and it's sort of, first of all, we see Shania snap for a moment, and she calls it off as a joke, but you're like, I think Sena's nervous laugh sums it all up perfectly.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, what do I do here? Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of the signs. It does set up this whole theme that we'll see more of again later, but that Sena and Shania have a bit of a similarity in that they both want to impress people, and that's definitely gonna play more into later, as well as in a hero quest later down the line, but we won't cover those here. We'd be here in eternity. But
we'll be in the endless now of Xenoblade discussions.
Oh, we could be here a while. But moving on from that, I think there are some nice. I want to mention here as well that there are some nice smaller moments. We get a lot of them throughout this chapter. Like we have a scene between Tyon and Mio talking about her remaining time, because of course she's coming up quite quickly now, only a month left at this point. We get even the scene between like Mio and Lanz discussing that sort of thing. There's loads of these really small character moments that, again, endless now if we were to discuss them all, but I appreciate that the game is continuing to do that and have these smaller moments where each character gets their dynamic. I mean, we praised this back in chapter 1 and 2, but it's still happening even this far in, amidst all the crazy lore stuff. They don't slow down.
Yeah, it's exactly what you say. It's just a really good series of interactions across the entire game. Very much replacing heart to hearts, but making it feel more meaningful and central to the story, which is just always a good thing. So yeah, it's great to see all of that, and again, I'll need to see if I can compare like every character out of the main cast and see if everyone interacts with everyone at some point or another.
So then we get onto our next area of the game. We infiltrate our way into, I'm going to pronounce this one incorrectly, Garte prison camp? Garte?
I have no idea. I pronounced it Ligart, but I have no idea.
Ligart. That makes sense. I'm going to go with Ligart. But this area as a whole, it's so dreary and depressive, and of course it's meant to be, but it is such a good job at being like, yeah, this sucks, immediately. Like, man,
which is odd because it's actually quite nice, a lot of the area. Like, it's a pretty spacious prison, and you know, considering that all the people in there, they're not like thugs as much as a certain character may want you to believe. They're not all just thuggish characters. They're all like lost numbers, of course, people that are on your side. So the whole main issue with prison of the prisoners might beat you up isn't like a huge concern here. So
no, but what I think, and I'm getting a bit ahead, but what this game does a particularly good job of making it still feel oppressive by the fact that it makes you go through these days doing mundane tasks before you break out. Like, you actually have to just go through and just do these really sort of generic, like, it's like doing the Xenoblade 1 side quest, you know, to sum it up.
Pretty much.
Collecting bits. But I think it actually does a good job of like making you feel like, yeah, this is what these people have to do every day of their lives for years if they don't get out of here. And the best that they can hope for is the only escape is if they're chosen for the execution, which is no escape at all, you know. So it's really like dark and oppressive, but we do get some energy here because we get the character of Ghondor. Ghondor, your Dags.
Exactly. If you didn't say that right then, I was going to.
That's literally what I've got written here in my notes. Ghondor, your Dags. That's. I feel like she might be the divisive character, but I like Ghondor.
She's very divisive because of how rude she is, and she is incredibly rude and abrasive, but that's
Yeah.
just who Ghondor is, you know.
The moment
That's
she
how
comes out
be.
calling Monica bitch queen, it's like, god damn, they are. She
Yeah,
does not hold back.
and then they end up calling out Uni, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, for swearing, and it's like, okay, alright, Xenoblade nowadays, you know.
Yeah. It's I like her character, but again we got another Vandham. She's definitely a different take. She takes the aggressiveness of the Vandham to a whole nother level. But it's quite fun. I like her sort of design about the martial arts thing and how that plays into her character, hero. Of course, we'll get to that in the hero discussion, but generally, she's an interesting character here, and we are able to win over her trust just about after getting into a good old-fashioned scrap. So,
Exactly. So, we kind of the interesting part is that we don't immediately win her over in this one. It does take a day
yeah,
or two, which is pretty cool because clearly Ghondor is quite set in her ways, but then Mio is able to convince her, which is where we get more Mio development with her thoughts. So Gondor's interesting. Of course, she's not completely done in the plot yet. She kind of joins Monica as like one of the very, very few characters in the game who kind of is recurring until the end.
yeah,
Because I feel like I mentioned this before, but in one of the earlier videos, but there aren't really like any recurring support characters in the game. The only recurring characters are evil ones. So
yeah.
it's kind of cool to see, but anyway, that's me waffling.
Yes, we do have a nice. We prepare. She agrees to do a breakout. It's going to be in a few days, and we have a few scenes before then. Like one I want to call out is Lanz and Sena. Their little heart to heart where they talk about strength and the fact that they both consider themselves, weak, but that only means that they have room to grow. And it's really cool to see them have a bit of a heart to heart because, like we said before, Sena has had the least focus so far, and compared to Mio and Noah's and Tyon and Uni's relationship, which has that more elements of romance in there. This is a nice sort of just pure friendship, wholesome training buddies, and this is a great scene that really delves into their dynamic between them.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very nice point where they get to have their moment because, of course, the other two Ouroboros pairs have them all the time. Although Lanz and Sena do have them, in the past they've all just kind of been like fun or really short. So
Yeah.
it was nice to have that one and very much sets up for something later in the chapter.
Yes. And speaking to, let's just get straight to that because we're having the prison break now. We're getting out of there. It all comes together. We get every time I go to say Lanz and Sena, I always say Sans, and I hate myself for it every bloody time. Lanz and Sena use their Ouroboros form to just completely destroy the door, which is just great.
Right.
But we are greeted by some enemies. It was a trap. It was a big trap because we have Consul N and M are here, as well as Shania, who just completely stabbed us in the back, which I guess was sort of didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like, yeah, you could kind of tell after a while. There's so many scenes, especially with her in the prison, where it's like, yeah, she's sus. So, ugh. This is why everyone hates her. Yay!
But to give it some credit, like, I didn't see exactly where they were going with it, but I kind of like the way it pays off in her character that she sort of Shania has this sort of idea that, she never lived up to Ghondor, and that she wants an opportunity of life, and that's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, the cycle of rebirth is a good thing because it gives you another chance. And whilst I don't think she's right, because it gives you a chance in the really shit world. It's not the way things should be. But I kind of like that we see that perspective from someone else, and it makes sense. Like, I can understand why she thinks that way and why she is the way she is. It's kind of a new type of villain, I think, that I quite like being explored here.
It's a very sort of, well, ironically enough, it's a very human villain. Because it's like, her thought process is obviously flawed, but like, from her perspective, it still makes sense why she's doing it, because she wants to enter the cycle again.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like it's good that the villain has that kind of motive, and it's not just haha I'm bad because I feel like being bad and want power. It's like no, actually she kind of just wants to live more. Like it's flawed, but the motive's definitely there.
Yeah. And then N and M reveal themselves. Of course, we all knew at this point, but they are in fact different versions of Noah and Mio. And then Consul M steps forward to fight, and this entire section is so badass.
Oh, it's maybe the best sequence in the game.
Yeah, M's whole power thing, where she controls, she takes control of someone's body and is able to use them, and they don't know who to trust, and they're fighting each other. I think it's got to be the best choreography in an action sequence in the game. I feel like it's so strong.
I'd agree. I'd definitely agree with that. The whole thing where, I mean, of course you have the first fight with Mio, where the only thing in that fight is like the two Mios have done their thing.
Yes.
But then it's
that
when she starts
now.
taking over everyone else's bodies. Yeah, that's some great foreshadowing, that part. But
it is.
When everyone starts getting their bodies taken over at once and they're all freaking out, they're trying to find solutions because, Lanz comes up with one and the others come up with one. The deception
and they go into,
with Noah, don't attack me, I was lying. And it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, and then full on go into their Ouroboros forms to attack each other as well at points, and it is...
That part never made sense to me, to be honest. How does the control thing work when there's Ouroboroses? I never understood that bit.
Were we assuming that they only go into when they're defending themselves? Or maybe they can sort of wrestle... Maybe she has the ability to wrestle control, because her ability, I don't know.
Maybe. But, either way, it looks cool.
Yeah. And of course, Tyon steps up, because he always does.
He just clutches. He's the clutch man. That's
what he does. Yeah. He gets the idea that he can use his Mondo, because the Mondo are the real MVPs, as well as Samon. Samon and the Mondo.
True.
But the ability was like, okay, we just have to hurt each other, but we can heal you when she leaves your body, that's fine. It's such a clever way, and the fact that it incorporates it into the fight itself as well. I always love when story and combat and gameplay merge in that sort of sense, and it's great.
It really is. It's just very impressive how they managed to do that. And apparently a lot of people in that fight didn't realise the mechanic of one of your characters is going to get taken over and then just got wiped by Noah. Apparently that was a common thing. I picked up immediately that there was a gameplay thing there for some reason. Yeah, but it was a cool idea, and to be honest, I wouldn't have minded it. I mean, I don't know how you'd have that come back for more than just that one fight, but it was a neat idea for the time being, and just all the fights around here are great, and I mean the music.
It's good. The flute going in the Mobius theme. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. It's just very impressive. Very, very impressive.
It is. But after we manage to take down that, Noah, N himself steps up, and in the cutscene, we get to fight him, but in the cutscene, wipes the floor with everyone.
Yep.
Cutting them apart again, seeing the Ouroboros forms get sliced apart is grim. And then we get the Lanz and Sena payoff, where they decide they're going to make the sacrifice play and activate the annihilation effect by overheating it, it's such a great payoff for going back to chapter 4 when we saw the Mobius themselves do that, O and P. It all comes together here, and I love the way the game does that. It has different elements, not just from the chapter it's in, but from previous chapters. Smaller moments pay off in later points.
Yeah, I think what really impressed me there in particular was that, in my mind, rationally, I kept on saying, I was like, this isn't going to happen. They're not going to kill these two characters off because gameplay-wise it wouldn't work. And despite that being so obviously true, the game still did a good enough job of actually convincing me it was happening all the way until
I was scared, yeah.
Yeah, rationally I knew that this was never going to happen, and yet still the game was 100% convincing me. So it was very impressive how they did that, and of course later on in the chapter a similar idea happens where I was like, gameplay-wise this isn't going to happen, not this late on.
Yeah. It's a nice payoff that they decide to... So their whole idea of strength, and that they settle on sacrifice being the strength, and they, even though it doesn't go through, I don't think it's not like a fake out, it's not like a cop out, it doesn't ruin the effect. It's the fact that they were going to do it that matters there, and it's a nice character moment for them both. But of course, I don't want to say I'm glad, but I am glad that X shows up and ruins it.
Yes, credit to her for that, because otherwise it would have been a very sad rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, interesting, because by this point, Uni's hero quest is open, so you've probably met X if you're doing everything. But if not, you may not have. This could be your first time.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, God, someone out there make a what if video on what if X didn't intervene there, you know? Would have been super interesting.
Honestly, yeah, that would be really fascinating. Definitely wouldn't go well, I don't think, in the long run. But, X shows up, the sacrifice is stopped, they're all captured, and N has a mischievous look, like the Grinch when he gets a mischievous idea, you know, that smile. He's full on evil moment. And we are trapped in prison. And thus begins what I call Smoge.
Yep, it's pain. It's pain. It's more and more pain.
I mean, Xenoblade games are no stranger to that moment of despair, you know, like, I think a big easy comparison is Xenoblade 2 when Pyro gets captured, you know, and Rex is going to give up. They have those moments, and it's definitely one of those, but it's never felt quite as hopeless as this, in the sense that even then, like when Rex gives up, he takes some persuasion from his friends, and he's like, yes, okay, now I know what to do, I'm going to do this. They literally can't do anything, they're in prison, like, you can do nothing. And they themselves, even, I won't get to this yet, but even up to the ceremony itself, they don't do anything, because they can't. Noah, when Riku tells him, Noah, go try and draw Lucky 7, he doesn't, and nothing happens. It's a real feeling of hopelessness, and it gets you. It really gets you.
Yeah, I think what really sort of accentuates the pain is from the actual, like, in-game canon, what's going on, they spend a month in there not able to break out. Like, they are there stewing about it all this whole time. And it's very interesting because very rarely in these games do you get those sorts of passages of time. Again, like in Xenoblade 2, what you had is Rex was in there for like a couple days, and they weren't in prison or anything. He was just like in a random Tantalese like inn. But in this game, it's like, no, they are all stuck in a prison together with Mio in the room over, not able to do a single thing when they're just trying to break out. And then even from the viewer's perspective, where, you know, they end up having a whole song and everything, and just
you've got to get your sad lyric song in there, and they do it justice here.
Oh god, yeah, and just like the part where you play as Noah and you have to like physically interact with the bars like 3 times, and it has that animation. That part, I think that was the part that honestly hit me hardest. For some reason, I was in a bit of a funny mood during the actual song and stuff, because I think Mio said "live and learn," and I cracked up at it.
God damn it!
Yeah, but that part where you actually physically play as Noah and interact with the bars, it's like, ooh, you know, like they drag it out so much to the perfect level.
This is the point where, honestly, Harry McIntyre as Noah really shines here. His performance as he tries to struggle out of the, you know, with the bars to the point where his knuckles start to crack open. The bit where he has his the day before the ceremony, where he has his sort of last words with Mio, and the moment she says "my Noah," and then he starts crying, I start crying. It's even collecting the screenshots for this video, I was tearing up again. It's brutal, and the performances are so great. And it's fascinating looking back, because of course we know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we know that this is actually N, not Mio. But it's interesting watching it back with that perspective, because in some ways it hits differently, but it doesn't ruin the effect, because she still, everything she says is what Mio's thinking too. She knows Mio's thoughts. They're sharing stuff, you know. It just adds another layer to it, looking at it back with what you know. But there's a reason, like we said at the start, there's a reason this whole section was trending. And it's only going to get worse, because we have the Eclipse Homecoming. Just the visuals of it. The visuals looking over Erythia Sea with the eclipse up in the sky is haunting.
It's such good imagery, and everything's almost like got a golden feel to it. You know, everything's this bright yellow, and they, you know, the flutes and the whole way it builds in, and it's like, they're really treating it like a ceremony, and all the characters are sobbing, as is whoever's playing the game, most likely.
Yeah, the way it contradicts the first ceremony, the first homecoming, where they're all like, "Oh, I want that to be me," and they're all excited, and now, no, this is what they really are.
Especially when it's like, oh, she doesn't come back, but Shania is,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, no, just the way that it like, it goes from being like, you know, sort of a quiet, sad point with the music, but then here, like, they're bringing in the whole orchestra. Like, they're not trying to make you silently cry. They are trying to make you absolutely weep at the top of your lungs at this point. With the music and the theatrics and everything, and it's like,
And again,
okay,
Harry
that's
as
fine.
yeah, I mean, there's the whole bit where he like makes him drops the flute to ask him to send her off, which is just evil.
Oh, yeah.
And then his scream of Mio is up there with Adam Howden. You know, he's put himself on that league. Harry has. It's like I at that point, and the chapter ends there with N about to just slice Noah, and it's one of those ones where like you see yourself staring at the screen like, what?
Yeah. That's
And,
the game.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what I expected. I was like, okay, maybe will M join our team and we get to play as M, who has Mio's moves. Like that's what I was thinking, but it's what a chapter. And of course, I mean, we won't spend too long here because we're already 40 minutes in. But we get on to chapter 6, which just carries on straight away with Noah in like a cloudy space. It reminds me of like Shulk talking to Alvis, you know, in Xenoblade 1.
It does. It's very similar.
It's that sort of retrospective look with a younger version of himself, for now, as the guide. And we get to see, building up of what we saw before about the past lives and past Ouroboros, where you get to see Noah and Mio's past lives, where they seem to always end up as part of the Ouroboros team. They always end up together, and then they always lose. And you get to see Noah, and Mio always dies first as well, and Noah has to watch her die over and over.
Yeah.
And again, it's brutal. It's really depressing.
Yeah.
I think
I still hated N after that, but it helps you understand him more, you know?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that stands out to me is the one where they've like abandoned the Ouroboros team on like, I guess is it Captocorn Peak? It's a snowy mountain.
Yeah, it is.
And they're just hiding together. And yeah, like, and then it gets even worse because you see that at one point they had a child together. And when you see Mio passes away because of shorter lifespan, and then Noah does, and his last words to his child, and it's all I'm saying is it's depressing, but that's because that's all this is. It hits you so hard. Yeah, and again, like you said, it's sort of, although N's still, you know, evil, despicable, you see why having to watch back, not just like one life of you messing up, but countless, we don't know how many lives of him failing and dying and leaving people behind. And like you can see why when, you know, Zed offers him this choice, you know, join us, you can be with Mio, and you can see why he takes it. It's not the right decision, but even Noah himself later on in the game, again I'm getting ahead of myself, but he says like he himself feels like if he was in that position he would have taken it, and you can't blame him really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess doing the math is like, if this world has been around for thousands of years, which I believe they say, and these guys only live for 10, then like that is quite literally like hundreds of lives.
Yeah.
And as we learn later on in this chapter, actually, is that like when you become Mobius, you get all of those memories back. So just imagine like you suddenly get memories of like hundreds of lifetimes where this person has died in front of you over and over and over again. It's like you know, I still hate Noah Consul N, but I get it. You know, it makes
Absolutely.
sense. I feel like if a more sort of say dark game did this like Nier or something, like I can imagine just how much they'd exemplify that point even more and be like, okay, yeah, you get the idea, be sad.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately Noah gets to seal that, but his life is different, you know, from the experiences he's had across the game.
Yeah.
He sees things differently, and we get to see his whole idea that he wonders about the meaning behind the smile on the people who left him behind. And his conclusion that that's because, although he used to think it was because, you know, hey, see you guys later, it's actually because they went behind, leaving something important, like M just did. We don't know it was M at the time, but And of course, this is enough for Consul M, aka actual Mio, reveals herself. We cut to it. She stops N from slicing open Noah, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Steps forward, and we find out it is Mio. It's actually not Consul M. They switched minds, and this is Noah's Mio right there. It's like, oh, thank God.
The comeuppance begins. Being at the absolute lowest point in the game, it's like, okay, well, let's just change that, It's great.
Yeah. The way the music cuts back in with like the flutes as she walks up to him and hands him back the flute. The way that even like her first line to him is just about her hair, being changed. It sort of reminds me of when Shulk and Fiora first meet, and her first line's like, "Hey, it's my first kiss." It's just a trivial thing in the stands of the greater scope of stuff, but it's such a sweet moment. But N, on the other hand, Jesus Christ, he breaks.
Mio, my Mio. I think my favourite version of that cutscene is when people have put like one of the funny themes from Xenoblade 2 over it. Like the Nippon theme. It's so... There's a video out there, please watch that. I'll send it to you after this, it's so good.
Oh, I'm down for that, yeah. But again, Harry McIntyre's acting here is phenomenal as N as well as Noah.
I think he peaks here, actually. This whole section, of course, but especially here.
It's just such a great moment, and we get your comeuppance here. I'll skim over a bit of this because, again, we're running low on time really here, but you get the Sword of Origin, the true Sword of Origin from the Ouroboros form, just pulls out of his chest, which is badass. As we take down N, we get we also get to take down a giant mech queen, which is
Agnus
interesting.
Queen. Thing is, that's such a minor part of this chapter in the end. Like in chapter 4, the big ending fight was it's against the Kevis Queen, but in this one it's like, well, we know
she's
that you're a fake.
Yeah.
We've kind of had this happen before. We've just had like a ton of stuff happen. It's like, okay, we're just here to show off Final Lucky 7, which is unlocked as a talent art, really. That's the point of it.
Exactly, yeah. And we they sort of cut their losses. X is like, let's get out of here. They do have an Annihilator, and they go to destroy the city, but thankfully, and it all turns out to be another fake out. City are alive. They show up. And we get our final moment with Shania here, which is brutal, because after losing this, she just straight up... I should mention, we learned earlier that they made her into the cycle of rebirth. We sort of learned that earlier. And she decides to choose rebirth and, offs herself right there. And damn, that Xenoblade doesn't usually get that dark.
They just did it, and it's like, okay, we did talk about... super villain pons in chapter 4, and we mentioned that there, but someone actually did it. Okay.
Just happens. It's a hard moment. It's quite tough. But it's gonna get more payoff later in the hero quest, which we won't discuss here. But it does have payoff there. But I think maybe I'll quickly mention here. This is our first time to talk about the location Agnus Castle, because this is your first time you get a breather. And hearing that music for the first time is just like...
it's glorious, isn't it?
It's all over now, and it's so good. It's a small area, there's not much to it. I wish you could explore more of Agnus Castle, but it's such a beautiful location, both visually and music-wise, now that all the smoge is over.
There's not a whole lot that happens here, like you say. The only one thing I do want to quickly draw attention to is the hair thing, where you get to choose whether to keep Mio's hair long or not. And, we hardly talked about it, I guess, but the whole foreshadowing with the body swapping was amazing. But anyway, regardless of that, the hair thing. So when I was doing this, I was told by a certain Gabe that this was a non-reversible decision.
Oh, really?
And you could not... Well, of course, you can change it in the menu at any point in the game. He just said that to troll me. And it worked. I sat there for about, I think, maybe 30 minutes trying to decide. But it's nice that they give you the decision, is my point here. And the funny thing is that up to this point, you still have her in the... Like, before you do that decision, you still have her in the, like, outfit, the grey Consul outfit. And of
Yeah.
course, soon after this scene, you no longer have access to that outfit. It's like a temporary thing. But I did like 5 hero quests with that outfit on because I didn't realise it was about to go away. So like I've got a ton
Nice.
of the game where I just used it, I guess.
What did you pick in the end, out of curiosity? What hairstyle?
I think I picked long hair. I think I kind of flip flopped a lot. So
Fair enough. I went with short, so duality of jokers, I suppose.
true. We'd have asked Sam what he chose, but he's not played the game yet.
God damn it, Sam. Make those thumbnails anyway, though, you know. But the main bit of lore we get before the next area is we go to Hope's Rest, which is where we discover that this is where the city used to be. But as his first command as Mobius to become Mobius, Enwin and destroyed the city. You know, he's descendants of the Ouroboros candidates, and it's just another pile to the wow. En, you suck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like we get it,
very
but also, yeah, it's depressing.
Yeah,
But
and
then
that's
again,
kind of the point where you realise that Zed is the main big bad. Like before that point, we'd seen him, but the cast had no idea. But now they're like, he's the big bad, and then you like get a cut to him. It's like, wow, I can't wait to see what this guy's up to because he's such a central character. I hope that it's not vaguely interesting, but otherwise not a hugely interesting character.
Just let him enjoy his movie in peace. He's chilling in his theatre, he's got his popcorn, you know, we'll get to him later.
We'll get to it in chapter 7, it's fine.
But it is interesting, but yeah, we sort of, this is really where we get, like, our goal here is not just to get to Swordmarch, you know, we're going to defeat Zed and we want to end this world the way it is now, you know. Not usual for a JRPG that the quest of the heroes is to end the world, not prevent the end of the world, but that's what our goal is now. And we're setting off on that, but first of all, we need to find the real queen, Muh Queen Nia. Which brings us to Captocorn Peak.
Yes.
And this is an interesting area because I like the fact that you've come full circle on the map and you're directly above the first area of the game. For a start, that's really cool. And I love like
the idea
seeing...
of like you can see it from the first area, like Agnus Castle.
Looking down and seeing like the battleground where you fought Colony Sigma, was it? All those hours ago. Yeah. It's really neat, and it's just nice to have a snow area. It's really pretty. The music is very chill, not just chill snow pun, but generally chill. Yeah, what do you think of
Fallen Arm-esque. I think the music is the highlight for me. Like the theme is probably, well, I can't say for sure, but like it's one of my favorite area themes in the game again. Very up there, and the area itself, I would say I'm less impressed with the area compared to like Tantal or even probably Valak Mountain. Because the views aren't as good and stuff like that. But and it's a very like small area. But you know, even outside of that, like I liked it. You know, you've got to have that snow area there. It's got some interesting enemies and stuff like that. So you know, it's interesting.
And our main point here is we have Mio's quest, Mio's hero quest as part of the main story, which, you know, makes sense. She's a protagonist. And to start off, technically we see a teaser of this beforehand, but I'll compile that with later stuff. But we see a flashbacks of her Miyabi. We're finally getting into that side of her story, which has been teased throughout the entire game. And I really like... Honestly, Miyabi's generally a favourite character for me in this game. Like, low-key, one of my favourite heroes. I think her stuff, seeing how she influenced Mio, how Mio didn't want to be an Offseer, but then Miyabi sort of teaches her the whole point of Offseeing is that it's sort of a bit like what we've seen throughout Noah as well. It sort of gives people peace, it brings them comfort, and we even see that someone mourning on the battlefield and thanking them. And generally, Miyabi's dynamic with Mio, I think, is really interesting, and I loved seeing that for the first time, finally, you know, getting into that now.
Yeah, I definitely would have loved to have seen more of that, because it was a very interesting dynamic, and, you know, it's kind of interesting how they have Noah and Chris mirror that, but, of course, Miyabi gets a lot more focus, which is fine, and, you know, it's pretty cool that she's there, and they bring her into the plot after being mentioned all the way back in, well, very early chapters, if you count the Ouroboros vision things that they had. But, yeah, it's cool to see her here, of course. you just learn a bit more about them and how like, oh, there's a hidden colony Omega and they were doing experiments and let's go check it out. And so you get all of that, and then you finally get there, and a lot more than just Miyabi happens. We'll say that.
Mwamba!
The Mwamba Avalanche is here. Oh god! And Kamaravi, who is also one of my favourite characters. So it's like
and hacked, I guess.
Hacked. No.
Yeah.
God, as weird and creepy as Consul Y sort of is, I forgive him for reviving, like, bringing us Miyabi and then also two of my favourite characters back. Like, what a pipe dream. And I mentioned this a lot when I was playing the game, but like that specific section where it's just like, oh, I just have the powers to revive them at like their 9th term or whatever to make Kamaravi playable. And it's like, it's the single biggest cop-out in the whole series. The single biggest set of like, is it plot armor? I don't know if it counts as armor. It's like a whole plot like revival. And it's very cheap and it's very underdeveloped, I suppose, and just sort of stuck in there and just for convenience. But I forgive it in every possible sense because it brought back Kamaravi and Mwamba.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. Like, I saw, Kamaravi in the hero list. I didn't mean to, I tried not to look at it, but he stood out. I was kind of assuming he'd be a post-game or something, like Mikard and that in Xenoblade 2, New Game Plus. But It was interesting they did that. And I do at least, although it is definitely cop-out, I like what they do with it and with Offseeing as well. Because this really gets into what Offseeing is a bit more. And the fact that these puppets they're sort of like, they're 9th term, but they don't have minds of their own. But the melody and sort of the Offseeing is able to sort of fill them with purpose. But then the true meaning of Offseeing, I suppose in a sense, is it carries the memories of people in the melodies you play. And how they're able to use that to break free. That whole scene where Noah and Mio play together against Miyabi, and the origin sword starts to like glow and everything. It's a really cool moment, and I think it's nice getting payoff for the off-seeing side of things, which has taken a bit of a back step the past few chapters.
Yeah, it's very cool that they bring that back in here, and it's the most relevant place to do it. It's pretty cool how they have like just the sword in the ground, and it's like this is sort of adding on to the list of things. It's like, oh, Lucky 7 can do this, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, they could use that and everything. And I guess on that note, there is a brief cutscene earlier that talks a bit more about Lucky 7 with Riku. But again, I'd rather talk about that in the future of Xenoblade video we'll do.
Makes sense.
I feel like it's more relevant there. But for now, like, yeah, just having these characters back and kind of bringing them back to their senses is cool. Getting to fight them here is good because this is the only point in the game where you fight Kamaravi in his regular form. I've spoken my grievances about that. You can't fight. The only other place you can is in like one of the challenge battles, and it's like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just
we wrap things up.
They're all here.
Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff, won't. If you want to follow up on Kamaravi and Mwamba and Hacked, that's all side quest stuff. Miyabi becomes a joinable hero now, which is great. I getting ahead, but I used her in the final battle. I liked having her on my team.
Fair.
So she's a good choice. If you're not using like Riku and Manana, she's a good choice. But now that that's all sorted, we can move on to the Cloudkeep. And just when the Cloudkeep appears, which is meant to be Queen Nia's resting place, not like in a death way, but and you hear those melodies of drifting souls coming for the first time, and oh god, that was a special moment.
Yeah, it hits deep, doesn't it? Finally hearing that melody again, it's like, that's brilliant, and the way they do it as well, it's very good.
It's a perfect choice. I've seen people mention how I think, assuming that this is correct, that although Drifting Souls plays a lot in Xenoblade 2, in the main game, the only point the instrumental version plays is Nia's Awakening as a blade.
Yes.
So it's sort of is fitting that it's her theme in a sense, and it was a good choice to use. And we get to see her. We make our way up there. We see a little drow mark on the top of the building, which is nice, which is a nice touch.
It's very cool there.
But yeah, and she's up, and then she gets shot like Zanzo and Xenoblade 1.
I remember
You know.
doing that, and I was like, no.
I was like, surely they can't do that. But even then, I was like, what?
I will say this game has so many fake outs, probably the most
It
in
does.
the series.
Yeah, that's true when you think about it. And who shows up but good old DJ, Consuls D and J, Dirk and Yoren here. And
Yeah. This is where
time
you
to
learn
settle
his
the
name
score.
is Duck, isn't it?
I think it might be, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's quite funny. Like, this is the third time you encounter them, which is weird considering they're like a metal face equivalent.
Yeah.
The fact you only fight them 3 times is an issue, but it's whatever. But this is where you finally learn about Dirk. They kind of explain when you first see them. It's like, oh, that's Backblaze Dirk or whatever his name was, and he's a serial killer. It's like,
yeah, he's just.
I guess
he's
they
not
needed
even like
lore for him.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't get like development in the same sense as other villains in the game. But I still like that they're like, yeah, he's just a batshit crazy serial killer. He's not got like intense
that's
motives. He's not got like a reason for being evil. He's just a dick. That's just who he is.
It's the point where you realise, oh, it's Mumcar, like,
Yeah,
essentially.
he's even got the claws, hasn't he?
Yeah, the point where they bring out the claws is like, okay, this is just Mumcar, but
Yeah,
sure.
but I don't mind it. We've already got so many like complex villains. You know, we got N and M and Yoren and
Yeah.
and Shania. Like, yeah, just have just a evil dude.
He basically exists as like a plot point for, almost like a thing for Yoren to bounce off of, I guess.
Yeah.
And be
you
like
know,
a shining example of a Mobius is what I like to think, because, you know, the other Mobius main characters have all got something else to them, but to me, Dirk is like textbook Mobius.
Yeah. And this is the moment where we actually, you know, Lanz and Noah and Nat are able to get through to Yoren a bit. We learn a little bit, we see a bit more about his rebirth, and that, I think this is really brutal when you see all the ways he just died pathetically. It's you sort of understand again why he would choose this after being shown a lifetime of, I mean, sorry Yoren, but being pathetic.
How low must your self-esteem be after seeing that, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think I love how, not that it emphasises this, but this contrasts what Shania wanted. She was like, you get unlimited chances, but no, we are seeing this is the consequence of unlimited chances. Unlimited failures, like with Yoren, like with N and M, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't work out that way. And I think it's nice that Lanz, you know, by sort of, he doesn't, you know, rip into Yoren, but he actually tells him how much, you know, he means to him, how much he believes in Yoren, and that is able to get him through to him, and he makes the sacrifice play here, and takes them both down with him. Which
and again, calling back to that chapter 4 point which we mentioned in that video, it's like, yeah, he did that.
Exactly. It's I almost like, I wish we got a bit more Yoren, to be honest. I feel like I guess maybe I would have liked to seen a bit more of him and his turn to good. It does happen quite quickly, but also it doesn't feel like unearned. It still is a nice payoff for who he is, and it's a good end for both him. And the fact that he gets to go down taking out Dirk is like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I've said, you only encounter them 3 times in the game. I guess Yoren technically 4.
Yeah.
But you get a ton of points where Lanz brings him up like over and over again in different cutscenes and stuff. Like there was one in the city, for example. And it's kind of like
the little
main
models he
mystery
makes
is,
of the crew.
Yeah, and they're like wondering more than actually physically seeing him, which is an interesting contrast to Metalface, who you fight 5 times over the course of like only like the first 2/3 of the game.
Yeah.
You just see him over and over again, but again, there was clearly reasons for it. There was more places the plot needed to go than just that. And you know, it was an interesting end how Yoren did come around, and they had that point where like the screen all goes white and they just fist bump. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat getting to see Yoren. Like the moment when he changes from his Mobius outfit and it shows him in his like normal outfit. It's a nice representation that this is Yoren back.
And it's also nice how, I mean, skipping ahead, but when at the very end of the game and things go back to how they were and Yoren is there, it's like you know that he kind of returned.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, now that that's over, we finally see that, thank God, Nia is okay. And I love,
Yes.
I mean, we're going to get more into this next chapter, how she comes out like, that bastard got me, and then she, oh shit, people are here, better be regal. It's it's so great, but seeing that she's okay, I knew she would be, I was pretty sure she would be, but still relief. And I think, obviously, we'll get much more into Nia next time, because we're going to really start, Chapter 7's going to start with a big Nia lore drop, but it's so nice to see her back. Again, to hear that Drifting Souls remix coming back in there, and great way to end the chapter, especially after how the last chapter ended.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just a very positive end to what has been pretty interesting time. Chapter 6 is a very oddball chapter in my eyes, because it just sort of pieces together a bunch of pretty interesting points and does them all, and and then at this point you just move into the final chapter. So.
Yeah, we are ready for the end now, and so that does, I guess, bring us to the end of this chapter breakdown, looking at chapters 5 and 6. In the next time, we are of course going to be looking at the final chapter, chapter 7, and also we'll continue from that to give some thoughts on like the end game and our general thoughts of how the game wraps up.
Yes.
But we'll also have several more Xenoblade 3 discussions coming up over the upcoming months, such as breaking down the gameplay and looking at the heroes in more detail. So do stay tuned for all of that here, as well as our regular monthly podcasts and so on, talking about gaming news. So yeah, stay tuned here for all of that on BunchaJokahs, be it on Spotify, YouTube, or different podcasting sites, all under the name BunchaJokahs. Also, Kai, where else can people find you at?
They can find me on my YouTube channel, where my Xenoblade playthrough is still slowly being uploaded. I say slowly, it's half an hour a day, but
Yeah.
I think I'm currently, the videos being released are currently on chapter 4 still. So if you are interested in any of my actual reactions, then they are all there. I give my thoughts all the time, so there's that. There's also my Twitch, where I'm just playing a bunch of like random things. There's the new Mario Kart stuff that's out now, and Splatoon and everything. So come join in. I'll be doing plenty of multiplayer and demos and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. There will be links in the description below to check those out. And also to our friend Sam, who made all the thumbnails and logos for this series. We're eternally grateful for that. But go over to his Twitter and have a go at him for not finishing the game yet. We need to pressure him. So, but that brings us to the end. And yeah, we'll see you guys in our next Xenoblade Chronicles 3 breakdown. See you guys then.
Goodbye.